Hi. I guess action. Hi, I'm Peter, and I'm here to help you make good financial decisions in your own self-interest. I've read 11 popular finance books for beginners and ranked them using the ranking system I used as an analyst. Strong Buy is the best. This is a book you have to read. You'll find very useful and immediately helpful. Overweight, you should have this book. It's a good book. It's helpful. You don't need to read it right away. Neutral is, it's pretty good. It's average. Underweight is a book I'd avoid, and of course Sell, the worst rating on Wall Street, rarely used, is a book I think you should avoid. It could even be harmful. The richest man in Babylon. I spoke with him myself, says this guy, George Clason, and he told me a great story about his gold doth multiply and remultiply, and that's compound interest. This book is from 1926. I'm putting it at underweight. I'm putting it underweight because it's very old. It uses oldie English. It doth tell you things that you might know and you might collect your gold. It has some good advice in it, like, if thou dost have 10 pieces of gold in thou'st pocket, spend but 9. I'd say fine, yes. Saving money is good. Spending 90%, saving 10%, that's a great idea. But the heavy language, the oldness of the book, it's important historically for finance books, but it's not a book you really need to read. Think and Grow Rich. Think and Go Insane. Frankly, some pretty bad advice. It talks about visualization. You've got to commit. And he claimed to know Carnegie and all these other rich people, Edison, and have talked with them. He was full of it. Those were all lies, but it helped him sell books, and he did become rich. He has some really bad ideas in there, like burn your bridges. In order to commit to something, you must have no alternatives. This is the only real sell book I have. I think this book is really bad advice, but it's interesting that they had visualization and positive thinking, stuff that we talk about today, way back in 1937, and they put it in a book, and he became rich. The next book we're going to talk about is The Intelligent Investor, and we'd like to think we're all intelligent. The Intelligent Investor was written in 1949 by Ben Graham, Warren Buffett's mentor, and we talk about it today because Warren Buffett talks about it. This book also remains an underweight. It's a book about stock picking, which is very hard, but he makes it seem easy, and I guess it was if you had the guts to be in the market back then after the crash, which back then was kind of an insane thing to do. People had lost all their money. Stocks had gone nowhere for decades, and he was advocating buying stocks. Today, those valuations aren't possible. Buying a stock for less than cash. You could do worse, but I think beginners should not be picking stocks, in my opinion. In the words of Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the nose. Well, for the intelligent investor, everyone thinks they're intelligent until their stocks go down 40%. The next book in our financial theory is called A Random Walk Down Wall Street, and it's a very unusual book in that it doesn't promise you to be rich. In fact, it kind of says the opposite. From 1973, Burton Malkiel wrote this book, and he said that picking stocks is hard and you really should own index funds. And I think he's right. I think that is the way to go, and I don't think anyone as a beginner should read this book, though, because I don't know if any of us want financial theory quite like that. The Millionaire Next Door. I have to say, still an underweight. The Millionaire Next Door interviewed hundreds and hundreds of millionaires and discovered that they're not flashy. They don't drive sports cars. They don't live in huge houses. Most people who are millionaires live a modest lifestyle, enjoy financial security, but aren't really so showy. And I thought that was something of an insight. The problem with The Millionaire Next Door, even though it was written in the 80s, a relatively modern book, is that there's a lot of racism embedded in it. And I don't think we need to read that. In one, they call out Don King and Magic Johnson as irresponsible people with money because they spent a lot of money at one point on shoes. They also happen to be black. They didn't mention that. At the same time, they say, wealthy people tend to be of German or English backgrounds. So I feel like this book doesn't really have much self-awareness about some of the causes of inequality in America, and I found that somewhat offensive and unattractive. Moving forward through time here, Rich Dad, Poor Dad from 1997 by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm giving that one a neutral. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is sort of a hard thing for me to read because I found Kiyosaki himself somewhat unattractive. He tells a parable about how he had a rich dad who taught him valuable lessons that his poor dad, who worked a regular job and saved money, didn't. Big irony about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in my opinion, is when you open the book, the first thing it says is, if you are reading a digital copy or a PDF or a copy without a cover, it's probably stolen and you should report it to us so that we can take action. And then in the book, Kiyosaki himself tells a story about his pluck and initiative as a young person, taking comic books that had the covers removed because they were unsold and selling reading rights to them, building a library and letting kids read them for a fee. So he actually did in his book what he asks you not to do. Kiyosaki's pretty cynical, and he says that, the rich don't pay taxes and can't be taxed, and that stuff is pretty unattractive. So Kiyosaki's approach to wealth building is real estate. And if you're interested in real estate, then Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a good book for you. For other people, I think there's better choices and better books that will help you build your financial career. John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, his little book of common sense investing, putting it in neutral. And the reason I put it in neutral is it's really just about index funds. Very forcefully makes the point that index funds, passively managed low-cost index funds, are the best vehicle for saving and accumulating capital for most people. And I think that's true, but it's not really enough to make it worth reading unless you really want to understand that single issue. He doesn't talk about personal finance. He doesn't talk about picking credit cards or paying down debt or anything like that. It's just all about indexing. And, for that, it's worthwhile. And Bogle himself founded Vanguard, which is they don't pay me, but I really endorse them. Vanguard is owned by the customer, unlike Fidelity, which is owned by a rich family, or other investment houses, which are owned by stockholders and work for the stockholders or the rich family. Vanguard works for the customer, which could be you, and they won't take advantage of you. So Bogle wins in my mind because he's delivered that to the consumer. Vanguard is essentially a public good that helps people save money, and for that he gets a neutral. The book itself is, a very narrow book. I will teach you to be rich by saving your pennies. That's really what Sethi says. I'm going to put up in the overweight category. I put it there because it's a really useful book, basic financial advice about how to live a life that will be financially secure, how to save money. Although it sounds provocative, it'll teach you to be rich, there's some magic. There's no magic promised. It's just automate your savings, pay yourself first, which goes all the way back to the richest man in Babylon 100 years ago. Save money, set aside the money to save, and then spend the rest. He has good advice about budgeting, and he recommends negotiating credit card fees. He spends a lot of time on, say, playing credit cards, and some of that I found less than useful, but on the whole, it's a very readable book, it's a pleasant book, and it's got useful practical information. The next book to talk about is Millionaire Fastlane. And Millionaire Fastlane is a tough one because if you're an entrepreneur, this is the book for you. This guy talks about starting businesses as the way to massive wealth. And it is true. If you can identify an unmet need shared by millions of people and meet that need, you can become very wealthy. Literally, it's almost, I would laugh. He's talking about, invent an algorithm that helps people search on the internet. The founders of Google are now rich. Become a NBA star. Entertain millions. You will be rich. It's not quite as cynical as that. I mean, there are all sorts of unmet needs that he talks about. If you find yourself in life frustrated by something, maybe that's an opportunity for you as a business person to create a business that meets that need. But he also spends a lot of time putting down people who work regular jobs, set aside money. He calls those people slow laners, just really insulting. And people who don't have a financial plan, which is honestly most people, most Americans can't pay an unexpected bill of a few $100s. He's nothing but insulting for those people, calling them slow laners. So I'm putting this book in the neutral column because it has real value for some people. It'll be offensive to most. I just want to talk about some of this guy's malapropisms. I made a list of them and it ended up being quite long. The first thing is he loves to say distinction as if it means something. Distinction, they're not distinctions, they're little lessons and key points. He talks about asymmetric, which just in his mind means rapid. Like, my income went asymmetric. It rose rapidly. I guess it rose faster than cost, you could say. I made a treasonous mistake, he says, which means self-destructive. He has his own set of words that I guess worked for his audience. He sold a lot of books. It made for hard reading. And I found, spending time with him as a writer really annoying. If he mentions the 3 F's, he calls it fitness, friendship, and freedom. Financial freedom, obviously fitness and health, and youth, and friends and purpose. Those are what make people really happy. And it's very surprising that it's in that book because all he talks about in the book really are literally Lamborghinis. Over and over again, the Lamborghini comes up as sort of the symbol of success and happiness, and yet, as we saw from the Millionaire Next Door, Lamborghinis aren't that great. Cristiano Ronaldo was just talking, and I saw him talk about all the cars he owns. He can't even remember. He has 20. He's got a bunch of Ferraris, McLarens, etc., but he likes the Rolls Royce. Comfortable cars are nice to be in. Sports cars, some people love them. This guy's obsessed with them. He says happiness is the 3 F's, fitness, family, and friendship, but he spends all his time talking about cars, and he was a limo driver. So, I guess he's got a weakness or a thing for cars. I don't have that anymore myself. Now I want to talk about the 2 best books, in my opinion, that I like the most. One is Broke Millennial. I'm going to push it all the way up to the strong buy. And the other is The Psychology of Money. These happen to be the most recent books. Broke Millennial was, I think, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Psychology of Money 2 years ago, 2020. Broke Millennial, a lot like I Will Teach You to Be Rich, is full of really practical advice on managing all sorts of real life financial problems that people have. How should you choose a credit card? How should you choose a bank account? How should you manage student debt? How can you save? It's very practical. It's written with a lot of personal stories that seem useful, relevant. It's written by a woman, Erin Lowry, who's now a very successful podcaster and financial figure. She started out in PR and tells her own story about how she had very financially responsible parents who helped her understand money, talked about money throughout her life in a way that others, who she knew didn't. Is money something you talk about in your household versus something that's mysterious or shameful? Broke Millennial is a very helpful book. It's written like a textbook. If you're interested in any one of the problems it solves or helps you solve, you'll find useful information there. The Psychology of Money, though, is on a whole nother level, in my opinion. It has insights I didn't see elsewhere. Many times I've thought about a situation I've been in and thought, this makes no sense. Those people are crazy. Why would the stock be so cheap or so expensive? And then I realized I just don't have the information, he says. He explains that Hounsel, his name, Morgan Hounsel, he says, your life experience is like 1/1,000,000,000th of 1% of all experience. And yet you use that little bit of experience to interpret the entire world, and you do it well enough for you, but you really don't know, probably. I feel the same way about myself. I often think I understand things, and really I've made sense of it as best I can, but perhaps I don't, and I should be humble, I should be cautious. That's useful advice. The humility to understand what you don't know doesn't come naturally to us. We're humans, we figure things out, we need to act. In the financial world, it can be complicated, and it's important to understand what you do and don't know. He talks about luck. Luck is something that a lot of these books minimize. Think and Grow Rich takes away that luck and says, it's commitment, it's visualization, it's sheer willpower that made these people rich. Luck is a big deal. One example is Bill Gates. When Bill Gates was a kid, he went to one of the very few schools that had a computer in his age. Almost none had computers like that. He had access to it. He actually, with Paul Allen, the other founder of Microsoft, there was a third person who they were friends with. Turns out that third friend, who probably, if he would have been a decabillionaire and famous too, because he was right there with Allen and Gates, he died in an accident. So really good luck for Gates, really bad luck for the other guy. Luck matters. So those are the sort of illustrations that I didn't expect, that taught me things I didn't know, and I found it really, really helpful and fun. So I would say Psychology of Money is probably a level 2 book. The most practical book for someone just starting out is probably Broke Millennial. I would give that the strong buy. But after you've read Broke Millennial, if you want to understand more about the markets and about how much we all think we know versus actually know, and what we should and shouldn't think when we're thinking about investments, I would say Psychology of Money is a great second book to read. And the other ones, if you're interested in real estate, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you think you're going to start a company, Millionaire Fastlane. If you like hanging out with Ramit Sethi, who's also a very funny guy, you could read that one instead of Broke Millennial. But again, the 3 best books, I think, Broke Millennial, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, The Psychology of Money, really good books to read about finance. Avoid, if at all possible, Think and Grow Rich. Thanks a lot. Me does think it is time to endeth the video in the style of The Richest Man in Babylon. My chariot awaits.